a case that he just kicked ass on called Fouts versus Bonta. See where it says Bona? That's just me being an idiot because I rushed it. So, but it's Bonta, and that's the Attorney General. So I'm just gonna like push this real quick so I don't look super retarded. But anyways, there's a billy club. That's a traditional, well, not really traditional, but it's the modern police baton that they use to beat the crap out of people for various reasons. And so I just wanted everybody to kind of get an idea of what this is about. It's Bonta, though, is the AG. So everybody, I want to introduce Alan. I'm going to add him to the stage really quick. And then I'm going to pull.
Hello?
Hey, Alan, you can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, on the video, you can hear me as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so just respond back, okay? Because I keep on saying Alan can hear me.
I cannot.
Hey, Alan.
I haven't heard you say, Alan, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
I heard you talking about introducing me, and that's the last thing I heard.
Okay, so right now when I'm talking, you cannot hear me.
Correct. Right now, I cannot hear you.
Okay, hold on. Now can you hear me?
No.
So, Alan, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'm going to pull my. Looks like I need to be here. So, Alan, now you can hear me, right?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So, what I was trying to do, everybody, just so you know, is I was trying to make my image disappear so you could be focused on Alan. But that's just one of the quirks that I'm dealing with StreamYard. But everybody, what I want you to see here is, so it's Fouts versus Bonta. You can see that I missed the T right there. And that's just because I rushed it. But Bonta is the Attorney General of California. I would say he's the quintessential Leviathan. If you were to compare natural law with the Leviathan that Hobbes spoke of, Newsom and Bonta would be there. They would be the Leviathan, the great centralized control over every aspect of your life. And then Fouts would be the natural law advocate, the one who's saying, hey, you didn't raise me. You didn't bring me into this world. You're not going to show up when I get attacked or my wife or kids get assaulted. You won't be there till much later. And so there's a lot of people who don't want to carry a handgun or a firearm. A lot of people just want to be able to have something to defend themselves with. And I respect that. And so does Alan. And so Alan agreed to bring this this case, which is case number 19-CV1662-BEN-JLB. And this has been years in the making, and Alan has sacrificed a lot of his life in order to bring this case to us. And what I wanted to do here is kind of give you an idea of what's going on here. So you can see that's a standard police baton, like a modern police baton. And then I'm going to go ahead and let Alan kind of narrate what's going on here. So California passed a law that makes it a crime to possess or carry what they call a billy. Of course, it's very vague and ambiguous to what a billy is. It's basically a stick that looks kind of dangerous. So that's one thing about California. If you have a gun that has some carvings and etchings on it, and maybe the metal's sort of bent in a certain way, that looks scary to the state of California. So they'll call it an assault weapon. Well, it's the same thing with a billy club. If you take a stick and make it look kind of scary, they call it a billy club, but it's really not much different than a stick. And so that's what ended up happening here. And so everybody, I just want you to know, Alan Beck is the architect. This is the guy who behind the scenes, in my opinion, is the one responsible for the most incredible legislation that we've ever seen in my lifetime when it comes to the right of self-defense. And so everybody, I want to go ahead and introduce Alan to you really quick and have him sort of narrate, and I'll just sort of show the slideshow as he talks. Go ahead, Alan.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Michael. So I litigated this case with my co-counsel, Stephen Stambolia, for about the past 5 years. My clients are Russell Fouts and Tan Tolentino. Both of them are individuals that would like to own a billy. Now, you're probably wondering, what is a billy? Because, I mean, it's not a word that we really use a lot anymore. Well, a billy, as Mike is showing, traditionally is a police truncheon. Just little bobby stick that the police would carry on. In California, this term has morphed into a eldritch horror. Any stick that is possessed for self-defense can be a billy club, as far as the state of California is concerned. So you have certain weapons, like an asp, that pretty much are always going to be considered a billy, even if you, if you, for whatever reason, you possess it. However,
so Alan, hold on really quick. You said ASP, ASP, or an axe?
ASP, like a collapsible baton. ASP is the top manufacturer of collapsible batons. So, I mean, it's sort of like Xerox, people associate the word ASP with collapsible batons, just like you do Xerox with a photocopied paper. So, I mean, think about that. I live in a state where you can be hiking in the woods and you want to have you have a walking stick that doubles as a stick for self-protection, because there's a wild dog problem. You have all those collapsible hiking sticks. That's illegal if you have it for self-defense. It's arguably just illegal, whatever. And the bottom line here is this law is one that just doesn't make sense as a preliminary matter, because, I mean, why is it that you can't own a carved stick in your own home? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And secondly, I mean, and this law has been abused for decades by the police. It's just simply not, as a practical matter, I mean, this is a law that's been used to target people, and oftentimes people in low income and minority communities that the police want to find a reason to get in trouble. Because let me tell you, the average Californian isn't going to be thinking when he's going about his life that axe handle or you know or the little bats you buy at the baseball game. I mean, uh, sometimes even a regular baseball bat could all arguably are billy clubs and will subject you to a felony in this
Hey,
state.
Alan, let me stop you really quick. I used to be a souvenir hawker at Angel Stadium, Anaheim Stadium, and I used to sell those little mini bats. And I used to call them attitude adjusters here, 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 here. And I got called into the main office and they were afraid of lawsuits. They were afraid that they would be misconstrued as a baton. Anyways, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to give some context.
That's exactly it right there. I mean, we're talking about extremely benign behavior with a very common object, not just common for self-defense, it's common in people's lives. And we've allowed the California government to turn uh, this penal code into something that just is, you know, some sort of grab bag for law enforcement whenever they want to find a reason to get people in trouble. And that's not okay. And so my clients, first off, they would like to own a baton. My two clients, one served in the United States Marines, and then after he left, went to Oregon, and he worked in security, and he lawfully possessed collapsible batons while he was living there, and he had dispossessed himself of those once he moved to California. My other client was a military police officer in the United States Air Force. And as a MP, he was trained and lawfully used billy clubs. He'd like to own one for personal self-defense. And there's a lot of reasons people are asking why can't they just own a gun? Well, one, that's sort of beside the point. You have a right to own a gun, and you also have a right to own other, knives, batons, all sorts of whatever you'd like. But in addition, there are a lot of situations where you just simply don't want to use lethal force. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, a person hiking through the woods isn't necessarily is not necessarily want to strap a 357 or a Glock 19, onto them every time they take a walk in the woods. That's certainly their right, but that's not what a lot of people want to do. And they have every right to fend off, a wild dog, or to be honest, since we live in California, we have a very bad homeless problem. It's you may not want or have the right to take action against someone that's mentally ill. Maybe they're on drugs and they're approaching you in a threatening manner, but you still have a right to defend yourself. Another example is the most common scenario. I'm not going to say this as a fact, but I have read this. I believe it. The most common scenario for a person to have their home broken into is by a person that's had too much to drink and walks into another person's home uninvited. Typically just because they're drunk and they got the wrong house. They walk in. Now you've got a drunk person who thinks he's home in your home. And that situation occasionally turns violent. This person thinks he's home. He thinks you're the burglar as the homeowner. That's not somebody you want to shoot in most likely. It's
Yep.
But you do need to defend yourself and you do need to get him out of your home. Well, that's a situation where a baton or other form of less lethal self-defense is a great option. And so the whole notion that firearms are the end-all, be-all of the Second Amendment just simply is misnomer. In the Heller Court, which the Supreme Court codified the right in 2008, the Supreme Court used a number of colonial dictionaries to define what the term arms means in at the time of the foundings. And by determining that, they determined what the Supreme Court, what the founding generation, my apologies, meant by right to keep and bear arms. Well, they cite, Justice Scalia cites to Timothy Cummingham's famous dictionary. And I'm going to attempt to quote this, but I may get slightly off. An arm is anything a man takes in his hands to strike another in wrath or wear on his body in defense. And that's Timothy Cummingham's 1791 dictionary. Now, that term obviously encapsulates more than just firearms. There's nothing in that definition which says that that only involves firearms. It's any weapon that a person would take it as, were used to defend himself. And just as a separate matter, also includes armor. Now, a billy club is, if anything, the quintessential arm. It's the very first weapon we ever used was the caveman, the stick the caveman had. We've had billy clubs all throughout human history. And, I hear Judge Roger Benitez, who was the presiding judge of this matter, went through the history of billy clubs within the United States. Now, the state of California tried to say that there's a strong history of banning billy clubs. Now, as I mentioned, this law has morphed into banning all sticks. So it strained credulity to believe that Americans have always banned sticks in your home. I mean, that's something that I spent a considerable amount of time taking tasks on. And beyond that, the founding generation issued clubs during on many occasions, both during the Colonial War and the Revolutionary War, and during militia service, there were individuals that, based upon their position, had clubs. So even if you use a little bit more generic or specific term, the term billy, clubs are just simply something that have been arms in common use. Now, the state of California had they hired, gosh, I don't remember, it was either 5 or 6 historians / experts to try and prove this fact. And, well, the first thing the judge found is that they didn't cite a historical precedent on, during the colonial era that showed that billy clubs were banned. I think that something that was extremely damning was the state tried to represent to the court that 14 states banned billy clubs, at least at some point or another. Well, both myself in my briefing to the court and the court in its issued opinion went through and started to dissect that. Well, there were laws, not the colonial era, but later on in American history, where it made it a crime to carry a billy club in a concealed manner. And, there were a few states that thought they didn't want people in cities carrying weapons in a concealed manner so they could, whack you in the back of the head with it, right? But in all these cases, remember, this is a society where open carry was the traditional method that people would carry weapons, allowed for the open carry billy clubs. And more to the point, this is the part that I think really drew the ire of the court was.
So Alan, let me just explain to the audience. Open carry means having a weapon that you carry that people can physically see, like a holster where you see the gun, or a knife hanging off your belt where you can physically see it? Go ahead, Alan.
Now, the state of California claimed that they identified 14 states. Well, the court took a look at their evidence and realized that it was only 7. And the court found that California misrepresented the its historical analysis. It found the other 7 were actually cities within those states that had, pretty had prohibitions that, on the manner of carry. Typically, they banned concealed carry. They don't want people carrying weapons under their coats so they can attack people unprovoked. But I mean, again, if you want to carry a club in a manner that to take from a Willie Nelson song, Poncho and Lefty, all the honest world to see, that is perfectly fine. So here, even taking their evidence at face value, here we're dealing with a complete ban, even in your own home, to possess billy clubs, and it's a complete ban on carrying billy clubs as a consequence of it being a ban on possession. That's a lot different than a ban on a specific manner of carry. If the state of California wants to say you have to open carry in order to carry a handgun, that's a whole lot different than saying that you can't carry at all. Or more to the point, that you can't own guns at all. So the judge went on to say, even taking everything the state is saying at face value, I mean, these are just simply 2 different things. Now, the court went on to discuss more of the evidence presented by the state of California. And, well, let me tell you, it's the state had a lot of evidence on other types of weapons. And time periods just weren't relevant. For example, the state cited to a ban on lance guys in 1519, in the 1500s of England. The lance guys, in particular pole arm, those especially deadly, just wasn't considered suitable in just normal day-to-day interaction. And well, they also had a ban on demi-hawks, which are basically miniature crossbows. And again, 15th century England. Judge Benitez said, well, first off, we're dealing with a stick, not either of those 2 things. And even if we were dealing with those 2 things, well, I mean, what does the laws from the King of England have anything to do with our rights as Americans? We fought in a war to liberate ourselves from the crown.
And Alan, hold on. I got to interrupt really quick. This is something that's ongoing with all monarchs and great leviathanic states. Whenever you have the concentration of power, the first thing they want to do is divest the people of their right to be able to defend themselves against tyranny. Go ahead, Alan.
So then the state had a lot of other evidence about other weapons. And just like, he said, well, you can't, just because you ban apples doesn't mean you can ban oranges. So, it's, we're just dealing with 2 separate things. If your legal armament won the day in Heller, then bans on other types of weapons would have been sufficient to ban handguns. But instead, when the Supreme Court, in Heller, the Supreme Court said, not only can you not ban handguns, it's insufficient that a that rifles are allowed or shotguns are allowed. You have to allow all of them. Just like here, it's insufficient that you can own a knife. So I mean, this is uh, he went through that, and he just thoroughly and carefully dissected each one of the state of California's positions. Because I mean, ultimately, I mean, the state of California's position is it should have absolute regulatory authority over any weapon. And by any weapon, I mean, they're defining it, they include a table leg. They don't, that's a real thing. They believe that a billy club, a table leg, constitutes a billy. And
well, Alan, it gives them an opportunity for the great Leviathanic police, the municipal police, to engage in contact and investigate and come up with a reason to arrest you, put you in the torture cuffs, take away your money, and throw you in the dungeon. I mean, that's the historical reasoning behind all laws that ban the right of the people to defend themselves. Go ahead, Alan.
And so, I mean, this is the court ultimately found that the state just doesn't have a defensible position. It's just the bottom line here is this law just never made sense. It hasn't made sense since I grew up in California back, when I was in high school. I mean, they've been misusing this law. And the judge saw right through California's positions here, and it found very simply, you have a right to keep and bear all arms that are in common use by Americans, as the Supreme Court has said. And our judge, Judge Benitez, reiterated that holding. But it found that the law at issue here, California Penal Code 22210, is unconstitutional. And now, as of Friday, all Californians are able to own billies, carry billies. And now, hopefully on Monday, since this happened on Friday, the companies have not caught up yet, but I'm hoping that ASP and the other billy club manufacturers are going to start shipping to this great state of California.
And bravo, Alan, by the way, you and your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
That was amazing. 5 years of your life devoted to trying to help people be able to defend themselves. Awesome.
Yes. Well, this is part of a broader passion of mine. A very long time ago, I began Second Amendment litigation, and I noticed that there's a lot of laws on the books that don't make a lot of sense that deal with non-firearm weapons. Tasers were banned in much of the country, and myself and Mr. Stambolia, we decided that we were going to put a stop to that, because I mean, why is a weapon that's much less dangerous than a firearm that's also owned by has a lawful purpose? Why does at the time I think it was 7 states, and we got rid of those bans in 4 states and about a dozen cities, and then other people took care of the rest. And it's we built on this. I mean, we've got litigation right now. I have litigation with in the state of Hawaii on butterfly knives, and I also have another lawsuit on switchblades. And I've been in court. I'm actually at the Ninth Circuit right now. We had 3 judges agree with us that knives are a constitutionally protected arms, so you can't ban a type of knife. And I'll be arguing that from the full en banc court in June. So, I mean, it's the reality is most of the litigation, if not all the litigation, is on firearms. But I mean, knives, batons, tasers, these all are constitutionally protected arms, and the government doesn't have a right to ban them. And frankly, it doesn't have a reason. I mean, it makes for bad public policy. As I told you earlier, I mean, these laws typically are misused to attack lower income people that don't have the money for a lawyer.
Alan, it gives law enforcement an excuse to initiate contact and intimidate the crap out of less educated people to engaging in what's called a consensual encounter. And that's what they're looking for. So when you guys blame the police, what you really need to do is blame the government, the politicians who are passing these outrageous laws like cigarette taxes so they can choke some guy to death for selling a tax-free cigarette. That's the reality of what's going on. They use the police to throw them under the bus to protect themselves as they sit there and pass these absurd laws that take away your freedoms. Go ahead, Alan.
So that's the crux of it. I mean, as of today, everything's legal, and there is an option for the state to appeal. And they may very well do that, but many of the people listening probably have heard about the other 3 cases Judge Benitez recently ruled on. Duncan, which dealt with high-capacity magazines, Miller, which dealt with assault weapons, and Rode, which dealt with ammunition. All of those have been appealed up to the Ninth Circuit. However, Fouts is a little bit of a different animal. I think the state of California knows that this law needs to be revised at some point, probably just for public policy reasons. And if the state appeals this, they are taking a gamble, because if they lose this case on a stick, that creates very good precedent for someone that's challenging a firearms regulation, which the state presumably cares a lot more about. And I'm looking at the slideshow right now that Mike is showing all of you. And I didn't mention this. The Bruen courts, the U.S. Supreme Court, has said that how you determine whether a law is constitutional is looking to see whether the founding generation, the founding fathers, decided to whether they had laws on the books. And that's a little bit of a simplistic thing, but argument, retelling here. But anyway, the court also said that there's some modern things just didn't exist when the founding fathers were around. So there, you can use a more nuanced approach and engage in analogical reasoning. Well, the state of California said, here we're dealing with a modern technological change that requires a more nuanced approach, because billy clubs can be made out of metal now. And that's just factually wrong. They had metal. We've had metal in human civilization since, I don't know, I think Sumeria. It's for a few thousand years. I'm pretty sure the founding fathers who made muskets out of steel could figure out how to make a billy club out of steel. But I mean, even assuming that's the case, and I get the point they're making, is that a billy traditionally was made out of wood back then. Now would be made out of metal. I mean, that's just not a technological change. That's
or synthetic too. They're saying synthetic.
Sure, plastic or fiberglass
Right.
baton. I mean, that's not, that does not make the situation any inherently different, because you hit on the head with a wood club versus a fiberglass club.
Right. It's It's just a technologically simple weapon. I mean, convicts in the California and federal prison system can make shanks out of newspaper. I mean, you can stab someone with hardened newspaper. So, yeah.
What the Supreme Court was talking about is, obviously we don't have I'm sorry. Obviously, this founding generation didn't have airports. Airports didn't exist. There were no 747s. There are some legitimate public policy reasons why the government might not want to have people carrying guns on planes, commercial planes. Let's say someone challenges that regulation. You're right. The guy sitting next to you wants to carry his 357 on board. There, because this is a genuinely novel thing that the founding generation couldn't have conceived of. There, you're allowed to look to analogy. What were they doing with horse and buggies? And then analogize from there to get us to the airplane. And that's the situation the Supreme Court was talking about. It wasn't talking about whether, the stick is wood or the stick is metal, And
that makes sense.
This is an aside. I mean, this law also bans wooden billies. So they never made any argument that those get decided elsewhere. But so I mean, that's the gist of it. We're gonna see whether the state appeals. If not, as of right now, I mean, they haven't, and the law's been rid of. So we'll find out next week whether they're gonna roll the dice and file a appeal and try and get this decision stayed. It's I don't know what they're gonna do. But at least for right now, I mean, people are a little bit more free than they were, before Friday.
A little bit more free. And that's good because, we've got illegal aliens, especially the ones from Venezuela, flooding across our border, attacking, raping, and pillaging, and then being told that it's our fault. It's America's fault. It just doesn't make any sense. And then you have California trying to take away your ability to be able to defend your family. Then, of course, you see the mass exfiltration, for lack of a better word, Marine speak, people who work for a living leaving California in droves. And what you did may actually make people want to stay until it gets appealed. By the way, what do you think the ramifications are of this law with respect to firearms laws? I mean, to me, it seems like a bearable arm is a bearable arm. How do you think the state is going to deal with this one, Alan?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they have a hard choice to make right now. They can either let this decision stand, or they can take this case up on appeal and roll the dice, because if they lose it up on appeal, that creates something called precedent, and precedent is legal reasoning that will require the lower courts to be much more sympathetic to firearms challenges.
So basically, if the state appeals this and they lose, it's really no different than a firearm. It's a bearable arm, and that's what people need to understand. Whether it can shoot a projectile or whether it's a stick, it's a bearable arm. And our founding fathers, because of the great Leviathan, wanted to throw off this government that was trying to take away the same exact rights that California is trying to take away from you. Just remember that. And they've instituted this amazing public education system to brainwash your children and young people to think that being able to defend yourself is racist and bad. But why do you think that is, everybody? Well, I propose that it's because centralized control requires control. And if we, the people, have the ability to fight back, there is no control. And when you hear stories about the president saying, well, we don't need the Second Amendment because, after all, you'd need an F-16 to defeat us if we wanted to take away your rights. But yet they just surrendered to the Taliban. And in the wake, hundreds of thousands of weapons and pieces of military equipment that we had were left behind to them. But that's besides the point. The point is they defeated the United States with AK-47s, essentially, and true grit. And the government already knows that people, especially former military, Marines in particular, are capable of fighting this great Leviathan if they have small arms. And I would propose that is the real reason why they want to take away your right to defend against the illegal aliens that may be trying to rape your daughter. What do you have to say about that, Alan?
Well, I'll say this. There are elements in our society that believe, rightly or wrongly, I think wrongly, that people should not be trusted to defend themselves. And a society is best when there's top-down control,
Like
And
Canada, like Canada with Trudeau, right?
sure. And you've seen a lot of places. I mean, I think Australia is maybe a little bit more positive example. You've seen Australia turn from a pretty free society in a couple decades. At first, they lost their firearms rights. Then all of a sudden, you saw during the COVID lockdowns, people going door to door, trying to engage in just extremely horrendous um, infringements, encroachments on people's just private lives, and the
Bikers too.
firearm isn't.
Bikers too, Alan. Remember, they outlawed motorcycle clubs in Australia too.
Yeah, what's an issue right now isn't just your right to defend yourself, and obviously that's very important, but it's about a shift in a cultural shift where we accept that the government has a right to control just every aspect of our lives, and to me, I mean, what I've seen just my lifetime in California, it just leaves me really uncomfortable, just seeing just massive overspending, just massive control, increases the control. I mean, what they're doing in the public education system. I mean, parents are losing their right to decide the curriculum. And I know these things seem unrelated, but they are related in terms of the mindset and the zeitgeist of California having been manipulated to accept a society where government isn't about protecting the rights of the individual. It's individuals are there to serve the government. And I mean, that's something we need to try and push back on.
Alan, what you're describing sounds a lot like Soviet Union style groupthink.
Sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot of parallels between a shift in economic models and just some of the things you've seen. I mean, probably the thing that makes me most uncomfortable is just the curriculum that's being taught in public schools right now.
Terrible.
Yeah.
They're teaching a lot of, well, the NEA finally admitted after we heard the press say for over 2 years that they don't want to, and they're not teaching critical race theory, which is that all white people are oppressors and that all black people are oppressed. Of course, they were teaching it as another in another way called intersectionalism. But finally, the NEA admitted that they want all public school teachers to be teaching this anti-white hatred to all the other kids. So, you've got me personally, I can't name names, but people coming to me going, Mike, what's going on? My daughter doesn't want to be in school anymore because she's part white and part Hispanic. And she's being told because she looks white that she is irredeemably racist and incapable of being cured as an oppressor. And she's got all of her classmates now casting her aside because of her skin color. And it just reminds me of like what the Nazis did to the Jews in their public school system. And so everything that you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Have you heard similar things coming from families and parents?
Well, I'll put it like this: I do know several people that moved out of state because of you know issues they've had with the public schools. It's both Idaho and Arizona have some very lovely new residents because of the current curriculum.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I know several public school teachers who shall remain nameless because they're worried about their pensions and their retirement, who are very angry that their schools are telling them to lie to parents. And of course, like 99% of the public school teachers, they come from like the SC system or the UC system, and they're hardcore leftists, and they all have like rainbow flags in their classrooms and whatnot. And they're teaching basically a political ideology, a sexualization of the country ideology that most parents don't want their kids exposed to. And so what I'm hearing is from school teachers is, hey, I'm worried I'm going to lose my pension and my retirement if I don't lie to parents about these other teachers who have absolutely convinced your kids that they're not the same sex they were born with. They literally have activist teachers who are telling their kids that they probably weren't really born with the sex that they think they are. Their parents are probably bigots and homophobes and racists. And so they have like this fan club, like these teachers are activists. They're not even really. So we have like the curriculum, and I'm going to have a hangout with Brett Pike, who's a homeschool guy, next week. But there's sort of like a curriculum adjustment where they're graduating people and lowering test scores. You don't have to do well in math. You don't have to do well in reading, but you definitely have to know that your parents are oppressors and that white people are evil. And so I'm hearing this, Alan, from teachers who can't really get their ability to be able to retire unless they go along with the program. And yeah, and we'll be done with this session in a couple of seconds. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, Alan.
Well, as an Asian American, I certainly was. I was heartened by the Supreme Court's recent decision to find certain universities had violated people's rights by putting essentially discriminating against Asian Americans due to the color of their skin. I don't think it's right that we live in a society where people are judged based upon their ethnic background. Everyone should be treated equally, and we certainly should have a meritocracy in this country.
Yeah, when I was growing up, it was looked down upon to say that, all people based upon their skin color are illiterate and criminals. And we were taught to embrace the concept that maybe they're just less educated and we need to help them so they can become part of the American experience. But now what I'm seeing since probably 2016 or so, that there's this new push to segregate people and have like safe spaces to prevent us from being able to assimilate, which goes totally against what I learned in the Marine Corps. But now I'm hearing from lifer Marines, they're retiring early because they're being forced to attend racial sensitivity classes where they teach that merit is racist and white, and that the only reason why your CO even has a job is because he's white. And I'm just wondering, like, between you and I, Alan, this sounds like something communist China would love for our military to think. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll certainly agree with the fact the Chinese would like us to have a less efficient military, and they certainly would love us to, destroy our meritocracy because we, that's, I mean, I certainly can agree with that point. I imagine that every time they hear about us lowering our standards, I just read that the Navy has lowered its ASVAB requirement down to a 10 and just a whole host of waivers for everything from a lack of a high school diploma to, I mean, it's, I mean, I agree with you on the point. I'm sure that, President Z,
whatever his name is, commie, anti-American commie who has absolutely zero interest in America being successful, other than to pay back his amazing high interest loans. Anyways, guys, look, I don't want to lose my opportunity to interview Alan because I consider him to be one of the foremost legal scholars, especially when it comes to our unalienable right of self-defense. So with that being said, I want to let him get back to work because I know he's buried working for you and I every day. But I want everybody to understand something, that Alan does this as a passion and out of love for you and me. And he doesn't see color. He just sees rights. He sees the Leviathan and natural law. And so do I. And I'm a white guy, Swedish, and Alan is an Asian guy, but his last name's Beck. So he probably has some white in him somewhere.
I'm Amerasian. Half
yeah,
Asian.
but the point is, everybody, I just want you to hear me out. Like, black is a dominant gene. So if your mom's white and has sex with a black guy, the kids are probably going to look black. So I have a lot of clients coming to me saying, hey, what's up, Mike? Like, I married a white girl or I married a black guy, and now my kids are being told they're oppressors or they're oppressed. And like, it's making my husband or it's making my wife look bad. And now my son or my daughter hates my husband or my wife because of peer pressure of 6 or 7 hours a day with their rainbow flag classroom telling them and all the other students telling them, oh, your parents are evil. And so I just want everybody to understand something. That's bullshit. We're Americans first, and we need to love each other and love one another, just like Martin Luther King said. And not all organizations, there were black nationalist groups, there were Nation of Islam, and Martin Luther King stood for the concept that all men were created equal and we should judge people by the color of their skin. This new philosophy being taught in critical race theory, academic institutions, and in our military is the black nationalist philosophy, which was rejected by King. So like, people need to get educated and understand what's really going on here. This is about empowering the government and taking away your core ability to fight back. And that's why we need to support people like Alan Beck by any means necessary, because that's the only way that your children, especially if they're biracial, are going to have a chance on this planet, in my humble opinion. And I have biracial children too. So anyways, Alan, I don't have anything else to say other than goodbye. And, but before you say your goodbyes, I want to make sure that I can play this amazing patriotic music. Okay, go ahead, Alan, say goodbye.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, Michael. To everyone that watched, especially in California, thank you very much for taking your time. And, I mean, this is just the beginning.
And with that being said, hoorah, semper fidelis, do or die. See you, Alan.
Bye.